Leila Miller enables divorce by privatizing the public contract. This is the error of our day, and she's no exception to what's going on with her new article from Catholic Answers, 6 Uncomfortable Facts About Divorce. I had to bring this up because this is the error that hides, and it actually makes things really bad because Leila is so good in everything she does. Everybody loves her. She says so many good things, but she effectively enables divorce because she says it's just mental. It's between your ears. It's what you want to do as long as you know it's not ending your divorce. And I will be fair on this. We're going to go through it, comb through our article, and I'm going to expose the main error, which nobody gets. All right. And by the end of this video, none of us will ever say her name or mispronounce it wrong again. I'm John Farrell. This is Annulment Proof, the only place on YouTube where marriage gets defined.
Leila, Leila, Leila. Leila, 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 Leila. L-E-I-L-A. L-E-I-L-A. Leila, 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 Leila.
Totally, bro. I am seriously guilty of that. I call her Leila forever. She and I used to get along okay, and then I think our relationship has broken down just a tad, to put it mildly. Hey, listen, there's some stuff that we get wrong about divorce. It's really easy to do, and I've got to straighten it out. She's been saying this stuff for years, but it sounds so good because she says everything right, you might say. But there's one little kernel of a problem, and it undercuts everything. Even Babe McFarlane showed it, so I gotta get to it. Let's go to her article, shall we? And we'll go through this. Hopefully, it won't take too gosh darn long. There it is. Leila Miller enables divorce, and like I said in the background here, she's saying essentially that it's kind of between your ears. As long as you think you're doing the right thing, you're not ending your marriage, it's going to be okay. P.S. Let's continue a second. Anyway, let's go back. Here we go. Okay. Now, let's see what she says. Okay, here. Divorce itself is not a sin. That's exactly right. This is what she like I said, she says so many good things, but the real problem here is there's one thing that's wrong. We're going to get to it. Divorce itself is a sin. Correct. That's right. Divorce itself is a sin all on its own. Okay. There has never been a time in church history when divorce, I'm reading her articles just word for word, okay? There's never been a time in church history when divorce, defined as a spouse's willing and express attempt to break the marital contract, has been morally permissible. Yeah, I guess that's true. Divorce has never been permissible. You can't break that contract. But we'll get to that in a minute, all right? Okay, then I've added that... I'm going to kind of get to where some of the problems is with what she's saying. CC 2384. By the way, there's one little typo, Leila, in the article, right? In 20, she calls it 3284. We got to fix that in the Catholic Answers. So this is something that I added, and this is from the Catechism. I inserted this. It says divorce is a grave offense against natural law. Now, this is something that she does not discern about, but there's 2 divorces. The word divorce in the Catholic Church, or in reality, means 2 different things. There's divorce from bed and board, and there's divorce from the bond. In Latin, it's mensa et thoro. Divorce, mensa et thoro, is a grave offense against natural law. So when you separate the couple, when they're not living in the same house, that is when you're violating the natural law. It's the separation, okay? The contract, mensa et thoro, bread or board and butter. The room and the from bed and board. So divorce is a sin against natural law when you separate from bed and board. Okay, it claims to break the contract to which spouses freely consented to live with each other till death. So that's right. You are saying I'm going to separate the contract that I consented to. That's a violation of nature, and we're going to get to this in a minute. Why Leila, is essentially admitting this doesn't exist. It has a lot to do with NFP and family, and of course, divorce a vinculo, I put that in the parentheses. A vinculo means the bond. Does injury to the covenant of salvation, which is a sacramental, which marriage is, of which sacramental marriage is a sign. So when you read 2384, Leila, you've got to distinguish between the two types of divorce. The part that offends natural law, which is the separation, physical, okay? And then you have to talk about divorce, which a vinculo, from the bond, which does injury to the covenant of salvation and does not violate natural law. So you can get a divorce as long as you are living together just as married people and you're not violating natural law. You're giving scandal because it's doing injury to the covenant of salvation. You're saying Christ and the church are separate, or in the public, in civil law. So, and at the same time, you can give up the contract but still be married. So separation with the bond remaining, that's the offense against natural law unless it's done correctly. And we're going to get down to that, and we're going to get to where the problem is. All right. Okay. Let's see. So she goes through here and talks about what Jesus says about divorce, and that's good. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Consider these words carefully. The natural law is another name for God's moral law. Yes, grave offense. Okay, got it. Now, then she says remarriage after divorce adds to the sin. So she's correct about this because it's that mantra. Divorce is not the sin, just remarriage. No, no, no. There's a reason why everyone says this, though, and it's because of family planning, which I will get to. From what I know, from what I've heard, Leila Miller, is kind of, she's hip to theology of the body and family planning. I can't find a lot of evidence of that, but I have heard it. I assume it's true. All right. Remarriage after divorce. Yeah. Okay. Now the catechism. Okay. So she says divorce is the first sin. That's right. And remarriage, that is adultery, is the second exacerbating sin. So divorce is the first sin. But wait, doesn't the church allow some divorce? Leila Miller, let's find that out. Okay. Number 3, civil divorce may be tolerated by the church in rare cases, but never for the intent to end the marriage. There's the huge problem right there that no one is confronting her on. It's all mental. Got that? Divorce is mental. That's what she's saying. Hello? No. Can't do that. Bad. But never for the intent to end the marriage. Marriage is governed by natural law. The contract is natural law. Living together with your wife and kids. Nature, natural law. Has nothing to do with what's going on between your ears. If I'm intending to break that or not, it doesn't make any difference. And similarly with NFP, the conjugal act is bound by natural law. And if you intend to be open to life while you're trying to not be, it's the same thing. This is kind of why these two are related. Okay. I'm going to push pause and think this over for a minute. Yes, on my other videos, I've said, increase and multiply is natural law. Can't be violated. Okay. But if you have an intention to not violate it, and then you use your NFP, it's okay. Right. This is why contraception is going to follow at some point. So similarly, we can change nature based on what's going on between our ears. We can say we have a grave cause and it's fine. Okay. So similarly with the natural contract of marriage, if we have a grave cause if we think it's okay in our mind, we can change the nature. That's where those two things are connected. Okay. But wait, doesn't the church allow some divorce? Civil divorce may be tolerated by the church in rare cases, but never for the intent of end of the marriage. Okay. Most Catholics ordained and lay don't realize that the church allows civil divorce only if the innocent spouse, needs legal protections, quite literally cannot be obtained by any other means. Who is the innocent spouse? The innocent spouse is the one who is publicly innocent, not privately innocent. Leila Miller basically has come down to marriage is a private affair, and the innocent spouse is the one who is determined by themselves to be the innocent spouse, which is everybody. Okay. Nobody gets divorced and says I'm the guilty spouse. If civil divorce, this is 2383. This is the little loophole that everybody uses, and even Leila is falling for it. And I'll tell you why in a second. If civil divorce remains the only possible way of ensuring certain legal rights, the care of the children and the protection of inheritance, it can be tolerated and does not constitute a moral offense. Notice they don't say does not violate nature, because we don't go there anymore, because after Vatican II, there's no more marriage contract, even though they talk about it. There's no nuts and bolts to the contract because it's a total gift of self. And then she says, why is it not a sin? Because in accessing the legal help according to the strict limits above, the spouse is not presuming or intending to break the marital contract. That's not why it's not a sin. It's not a sin because if you need the civil law to back up your grave cause, then you can. Of course, that can only be done through the local ordinary, which she does admit down below, but still she violates that very law in this article. We'll get to that. So she says, why is it not a sin? Because you are not intending to break the marital contract, which goes back to what we said before, to our divorce. She goes, it's not a sin against natural law to break the contract as long as it's not in your head. Okay, so as long as you know your divorce a vinculo, as in the marriage bond is still there, you can go ahead and break this contract as long as you know you're still married. No. Doesn't make any difference what you do to your kids with a chainsaw between your head. You're cutting their arms and legs off. Doesn't matter what you're thinking. Okay, that chainsaw is doing something. All right. So what you're thinking about as far as divorce goes that divorce judge is going to slice and dice your family. Doesn't matter what you think about it. This is the problem. But wait, there's more. All right, here, let's go back to where we was. So, why is it? Here, I wrote this in. One's presumption or intention is irrelevant to natural law. That is correct. If you jump off a tall building and you don't believe you're going to hit the ground hard, doesn't make any difference what you believe, okay? So, she is saying that you can take your divorce you can go take your marriage contract to court if you think, as long as you know that it's not breaking the contract. You mean the bond? Of course it's breaking the contract, because the contract says you have to live together. So you're breaking your contract. It's just nuts what she's saying here. P.S. I don't do live streams so much because I'm trying to be precise in these videos, but I definitely will pick up all the slack in the comments. So one thing that I want to do is invite you to comment as much as you possibly want, and we're going to talk, and I will respond as much as you got. So there's no problem. I don't shadow ban or block anybody. Some of the stuff I've got on this, I'm going to do something from Crisis Magazine where I'm blocked on that. I have other accounts I can get to it, but sorry. Listen, she says, as I have written elsewhere, it's a shame that we can't call this protective legal maneuver something other than divorce so that we don't become confused. Yes, that is a shame. But I have the answer. It's called just go back to old-fashioned Catholicism, okay? It's called putting away, Leila. That's what it's called. There's two kinds of divorce. There's putting away, which is mensa et thoro, which is separation from bed and board. And there's a bill of divorce, which is a vinculo, which is eliminating the bond. Two kinds of divorce. Catholics can only do the first kind. Called putting away, which is in your Douay Rheims Bible, which doesn't get looked at anymore, and it's all been reworded with the New American Bible and all that stuff. Okay, so I wrote here, we call it putting away. Okay, but legalized NFP won't allow that because the new total gift of self cannot be contracted. So yes, NFP has created a new legal object of consent for marriage. It used to be the right over the body for acts, but NFP requires the legal telos of love, which means no more marital debt because we just have marital love. And as Christopher West likes to talk about, the only thing we owe each other is love, right? So no more marital debt and no more contract. It's covenant, blah, blah, blah. So we call it put. So in Matthew 19:9, it says you can put away your spouse. Legalized NFP will not allow that because of the new total gift of self cannot be contracted. So Matthew 19:9 exception clause must now mean, okay, so now, yes, I wonder what Leila Miller thinks about what Matthew 19:9 really means. She could talk to her good buddy, Father Dave Nix, to get it straight because he's got it straight now. It's going to conflict and clash with legalized NFP. There's no way around it. This is why Matthew 19:9 changed after Vatican II to accommodate the new non-definition of marriage, the new non-just, non-contract. All right. So now Matthew 19:9 exception clause must now mean for invalidity instead of fornication, adultery. Basically, after NFP or legalized NFP, there is no more marriage contract, only the bond, aka irrevocable covenant from Canon 1057.2. That's right. This is why everyone says divorce is not a sin, only remarriage after annulment, without an annulment is. This is because with the new definition of marriage, there is no contract, there is no rights specified because they're infinite. They're not defined. They cannot be defined. So there is no contract. There's stuff in there that you can see, but there's a ton you can't see after when you make NFP legal, and love is the new object of consent. So you're basically consenting to some irrevocable covenant which is undefined. This is why divorce does no longer offend natural law, which is why Leila is saying, as long as you think you're not getting divorced, you're not removing the bond, you can take it to court. But if you do think you're removing the bond, you can't. Wrong. You can't touch that contract because it's nature you're touching. Doesn't matter what you think. Okay, like she says. Divorce is mental. That's where she's at. Nuh-uh. No. It's natural, and this is why it shreds the kids. This is why divorce is wrong. This is why we didn't get a lot of divorce until Vatican II, because they've changed the contract. They have eliminated the objective contract to accommodate legal NFP, which is the total gift of self. Don't ask any questions. If it doesn't work out, divorce and annul. Divorce is not a sin. I am kind of a little bit surprised that Catholic Answers actually published this thing, because this is not their gig. They don't like to talk about how you need the bishop's permission. However, she put enough disclaimers or enough contrary information to that. Plus, I think they published it. Plus, Leila will always or often say, this is canon law and the bishops don't follow it anyway. It's divine law to get the bishop's permission to separate, because what God has joined, let not man put asunder. And once the church has gotten into public recognition of it, it has to be done through the bishop, according to divine law. That's 1692. Canon 1692. More on that if we need to. This is why I like to have the comments open, and we can nail everything down in the comments accurately rather than me just flying by the seat of my pants on stuff, let alone trying to do a live stream, with all the crazies, Set AP and company. Man, we can try, I guess. I'll see. We'll get there. But listen, let us continue. Here is Matthew 19:9 in the Douay Rheims, which is the version, the translation you got to get if you're going to get this right. Why then did so the Pharisees are talking to Jesus. Why did Moses command a bill of divorce and to put away? Look at that. Bill of divorce, avin kulo, and to put away, mensa et thoro. He said to them, because Moses, by reason of the hardness of your heart, permitted you to put away your wives, because you're going to kill your wives if we didn't let you. But from the beginning, it was not so. And I say to you that whoever shall put away his wife, got that? Put away. That means separate with the bond remaining, except it be for fornication. So if the spouse is doing something against marriage, you can put them away. By the way, Proverbs 18:22 says, You are wicked and foolish if you don't put away your adulterous spouse. So you need to do that. Nobody talks about that anymore because there's nothing to put away because there's no contract. It violates the notion of justice and contract. You just call it invalid. That's what they do. And shall marry another, commit adultery, da 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 da. Yeah, okay. So he says, except to be for fornication. Here is the commentary from Douay Rheims, which has stood the test of time. It's been there for 500 years. Excepted be means in the case of fornication, that is adultery, the wife may be put away, but even then the husband cannot marry as long as the wife is still living. Okay, so you can put away your spouse, but you can never remarry. There's separation with the bond remaining. Then she goes on. Thankfully, most states still offer legal separation instead of civil divorce. Well, okay, hold it right there. Let's just say that's true. Okay, it is true. Most states still offer legal separation. This means that if you take your divorce to the state where there's legal separation available, that is public grave sin, because the state and the church are supposed to kind of work together. The state is public recognition. So when you take your public bond from the church and take it to the state and say it's not a public bond anymore, this is scandal, all right? And it invites adultery and all sorts of stuff. So Leila, you have to tell everybody that if you file for divorce while there's legal separation available in your state, that's public grave sin. Okay, let's go on. I got some more to say about that, which provides the necessary legal protections, which also affirming that estranged husband and wife are still married, they cannot remarry. In those rare and difficult situations, Catholics should be recommending separation rather than civil divorce if possible. Catholics should be recommending separation. No, they should be told they have to separate. They have to do separation only rather than divorce, because if they don't, they're not going to heaven. That's what they must be told, not kind of recommend it. All right, P.S. Let's look at this footnote I wrote while it's on my mind here, right here. Okay, we'll make it big. Let's see. I'll just read it here, right here. States without legal separation recognize. I took this from a website in Florida. Okay, so Florida has no legal separation. Texas, there's a few other states. So what does Florida say on its website? States without legal separation recognize separation agreements. Specific legal agreements relate to formalizing the terms of a separation in Florida. These include a separation agreement. This legally binding agreement can provide the same result as legal separation in other jurisdictions. Okay, 2383, if there's no other way, you can divorce. Leila Miller, there is always another way in every state in the country. Always. Therefore, no one can ever get divorced. And you can't access the church, even though the bishop has a rule about getting divorced first for the annulment, it's not a church rule. And the only reason they do that is because they can't adjudicate a separation, because the church says there's no such thing as justice. We have nothing to do with the marriage contract because it doesn't exist. Let the state chop it up. That's how sick this is. That is the reason they have the divorce first rule. It's because there's no justice, according to your bishop, for the marriage contract. Child support, who gets to see the kids every other Thursday? Who gets to live with their spouse? Nothing to do with us, because it's a great big pile of NFP love, a total gift of self, nothing to do with justice, no legal terms. It's an irrevocable covenant, and and that's all we got. We can handle contracts, but it's a covenant, dude. That's why the church is hardcore, or the bishops are hardcore on this. Let the state do it because we can't do it. Yes, they can. There's separation courts. All divorces used to take place on church property before Vatican II. There's separation courts. It's still on the books. They just don't do it. That's where the separations are supposed to happen, and never divorce ever. Petition for support. That's another way you can do it. Can't get a legal separation. You do a petition for support. A petition for support, disconnected with the dissolution of the marriage. In other words, while the bond is remaining, allows one spouse to receive child support and alimony. Yeah. Yes, you can do that. Plus, you can always get, what do you call it? Restraining order and whatever if you need to. Postnup, that's another way of doing it. Postnup is the same thing. This agreement specifies the terms and condition of the distribution, division of assets, debts, and alimony. You can have a postnup, so you can have a separation agreement, a petition for support, or a postnup. And there's something called a SAPSER, which is an acronym in Texas. Same sort of thing. So there it is. One never needs to divorce in the USA. It is always grave sin to divorce in the USA, always, because there's always a way to protect the kids or whatever else you need to protect without a divorce. You can do it through legal separation type instruments of any kind. Always a way to do that. All right, let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Although the word divorce in secular realm may be confusing and misleading, that's because it's not, because we're doing the same thing. We're saying divorce means it's all lumped together. Sorry, let's continue reading. Although the word divorce in the secular realm may be confusing or misleading, it's simple to remember that no one may use the civil or family courts with the intent or belief that he is ending his marriage. He is not, and is free to move on. This is more crazy from Leila Miller right here. No one may take a chainsaw and cut their children in half with the intent or belief that he is doing that. That's what they're saying. That's what she's saying. As long as I think I'm loving my children and I'm doing the right thing, I can cut their arms and legs off. And it's because I have the intent and the belief that I'm not hurting them. So, just like I love my baby, that's why I aborted my baby, because I love them. That's how sick it is. So nuts. This is why there's separation courts on church property. As I repeat myself, the church is the bishops are scared to death now because they've let NFP in the door, which means the contract is out the door, which means they can't adjudicate jack, and they let the state do it, and the state is godless, and the kids get shredded. Okay, so they're like, well, we just got to throw more love at the problem. Why don't we have, instead of 6-month marriage prep, let's do 6 years, stuff like that. They don't say that, but you know what I mean. All right. So one may use a civil court, and on to the next romance. Here's what I wrote. Yes. Intent or belief has zero to do with natural law. Leila Miller would agree with that statement. So how can we say that we can offend natural law based on our intent or belief? Makes no sense. You can't do it. I can shred my family as long as I intend or believe that I am not, or as long as I think I am still married, I can go ahead and do this bad stuff. You can't do that. And I know she would say, well, if you have a grave cause, or, you're trying to help your kids out, has nothing to do with whether you think you're still married or not. Okay. In other words, one may, and she's saying, so this is my paraphrase. In other words, she's saying one may use state power to change the terms of the contract, violate natural law. No one can violate that natural contract by using the state. Doesn't matter if you still think you're staying married or not, has nothing to do with it. Okay, so but wait, there's more. Hang on. I'm trying to be very fair, okay? I'm not just like, I'm super mad. And no, I'm not. I'm trying to get this straight, which is why I always, if you want to call me on the phone, it's 206-501-8910. All my contact info is out there. I'm super easy to reach, and I'll take all comers, nor will I get mad or nothing. I don't get mad no more, George. What about moving on and getting an annulment, as everyone seems to do? Although It's true that we have sadly cultivated a culture of reflexive annulment seeking. You may be surprised by the following truth. Physical separation is allowed for certain grave reasons, but in all cases, the hopeful expectation is for reconciliation. That's true. The church teaches that in cases of unrepentant adultery or for grave mental or physical danger, physical separation of spouses is allowed with the bishop's permission. Ding, ding, ding. Very good. Absolutely correct. Yes. How this got in the Catholic Answers article, I don't know. It's just totally weird. But again, what Leila tends to say in the small print, or she'll say, this is just canon law and the bishops don't follow it. Therefore, since they don't follow it, you don't kind of have to either. No, no, no. You do have to because it's divine law, because it's connected to natural law. Canon 87 says that there's no bishop may dispense with due process. That means Leila Miller and I and no one else can dispense with due process either. You must always try for the separation court. You can't stop. You don't get to take your separation into your own hands. That's grave sin. You are a public abandoner, even if you're innocent as the wind-driven snow. And your spouse is super bad news. You're a public abandoner, and it's public scandal, like public adultery, to leave and get the divorce, no matter how good your cause is, without the bishop's permission. So you must publicly be always trying to get the decree of separation. Okay? So yeah, like I said, it's really good that she said that. Okay, the church teaches that in cases of unrepentant adultery or grave, physical separation of spouses is allowed with the bishop's permission. And it's not allowed without the bishop's permission. You don't get the sacraments if you don't get the bishop's permission or die trying to get it. You have to keep trying. You can never take the law into your own hands. This is where I don't think Leila understands or agrees, because she has said, my friend really needed a divorce, and so she just went for it, like that. You must always publicly be knocking on the tribunal's door to try to get that separation decree. There must be public recognition, otherwise it is scandal. Just like shacking up is scandal, just like adultery is scandal, communion with adultery. Communion with divorce is scandal because it's public, which gets back to my theme, all right? Well, never mind. I'll say some more. I'll talk more in a little bit about this, about being public. Well, while I'm thinking of it, let's go to that video right now. Let's see if I can find it. The sin of divorce. Here, let us check out what she says. She said a ton of stuff, but this is just a short one here from Eric Sammons, on Crisis Magazine, and she's talking about going to confession for divorce.
In societies, and again, read the catechism on this. It doesn't say then you're in mortal sin and you can't go up to communion. If you have destroyed your family, you are not in a state of grace and you cannot receive communion. So we're not getting it from anywhere. Nobody is teaching that this is a sin. And if you're the guilty party who did this thing, it doesn't matter if you stay single. It doesn't matter if you're not remarried. You've still done a grave offense against the natural law, against God, against family, against your family members. You're not free to go up to communion until you've gone to a sacramental confession and rectified your sin.
I'm going to go back over this video a little bit, but she says you're not free to go to, if you've divorced, you're the guilty party, you've destroyed your family, whatever, you're not free to go to communion unless you go to confession, right? That's what she said. The problem with that is you cannot absolve the sin of divorce in the confessional, so to speak. You must make public restitution before you can get absolution. Must make public restitution, which means you must get the bishop's decree of separation if you can't go back, or you have to go back. You can't get absolved just by saying, I committed this terrible sin of divorce. I'm really, really sorry. I'll never do it again. Okay. No, you must make public restitution. This is the thing that she doesn't, either she doesn't know or doesn't want to know or doesn't want to talk about. You cannot be resolved of your divorce sin without public restitution, because it is a public matter. It doesn't matter what you're thinking in your head. It matters what's going on publicly. But because Leila is saying that as long as you know you're not ending your marriage, you can take it to the divorce court. No, it's not a private affair. It's publicly governed. Then what does she say here?
So why aren't we teaching that? Like in society,
We're not teaching that, as you know, because marriage has been privatized, because the total gift of self, which is the new contract of marriage, the new object of consent, has no definition. It's all between your ears. I'm not receiving the love that I'm owed based on my private judgment. That's it. So there's no sin in divorce anymore. If you have NFP legal, you cannot uphold marriage and the contract and the terms if you have NFP legal, because you have to have two different natures. One is the procreation and one is the unity, and that unity becomes a right. You have a right to that, and then you can't define it. So I could say I have a right to all of Northern Nevada because that's where I feel is my love, and who are you to judge? So get out of here. You know what I mean? It's like, I could probably think of better places than that, but anyway, let's listen one more time.
Again, read the catechism on this. It doesn't say then you're in mortal sin and you can't go up to communion. If you have destroyed your family,
right. So the catechism is chill. The catechism is kind of weak on what they say about divorce. They technically say some correct things, but they skirt around it. If divorce is if it's the only possible way, but they don't talk about that it's not, whatever. Here.
Are not in a state of grace and you cannot receive communion.
Okay, so she's saying if you divorce, you're not in a state of grace and you cannot receive communion. This is Canon 915 material, Leila, not Canon 916, okay? When you divorce, you're a public sinner, not a private sinner. This is why you need that public restitution. Sorry to be a broken record.
So we're not getting it from anywhere. Nobody is teaching that this is a sin. And if you're the guilty party who did this thing, it doesn't matter if you stay single. It doesn't matter if you're not remarried. You've still done a grave offense.
And that's the other problem, is who's the guilty party. All right, Leila, the guilty party is the one who moved out in 100% of the cases, because it's a public matter. Marriage is public. Now, you have to say marriage is private if you've legalized NFP, because the object of consent is a private matter based on one's own conscience and definition of love. So if you don't speak my love language, you're not capable and you're violating my rights. Therefore, I've decided that I can do this separation because no one else can judge my love language. Dig it? Okay. So we have to objectively define the terms of the contract of marriage, or you can't defend it. All you're doing is, it's like complaining about gay marriage and complaining about drag queen story hours. Go ahead. That's good, I guess, but you got to go back to the headwaters, which is nature is up for grabs because family planning says that's nature. That's where it all comes from. So the rest is just downstream. It's like you got to go back and fix the problem first. So we can complain about divorce all day long, but until we define the contract and make it public instead of just mental, then we got nothing. It's never going to change. You can't get rid of it. It's going to just stay like it is because there's no legal basis. You can, like I said, everyone, if there's no teeth to the contract, it's whatever you want to do, and you just judge it
against the natural law, against God, against family, against your family members.
So she said a mouthful there. Hold on.
Against family, against natural law, against God, against family. You've still done a grave offense against the natural law.
Yes, when you've separated your family, that's, yeah.
against God, against family, against your family members, you're not free to go up to communion until you've gone to a sacramental confession.
You're not eligible. Has nothing to do with if you're free or you're not eligible. Public. Which brings me to another place on our, let's share this tab instead, right here. Let's go down here. I think it's right down here. No, where is it? Where did I put it? Oh yeah, here it is. The Eastern Code of Canon Law. There's some good canons in here. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but Eastern Code Canons 468 in the CCEO. Marriage cases between baptized persons belong to the ecclesiastical judge by exclusive and proper right. Boom, right there. No one can take their contract anywhere except to the ecclesiastical judge by exclusive and proper right. It doesn't matter. And if you've got grave cause and all that stuff, if there's danger of delay, you can take matters into your own hands for at least 6 months total. But no one is allowed to bypass this due process, because marriage cases, that means separation cases, belong to the ecclesiastical judge by exclusive and proper right. All right, so now if we switch to the Latin Code, 1401 says the proper and exclusive right, the church adjudicates spiritual matters and those connected with spiritual matters, which would be divorce and separation and all that. But they don't specify it. They're a little bit more coy, okay? It says, hang on, blah, 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 blah. Canon 1671 says marriage cases of the baptized belong to the ecclesiastical judge by proper right, but they don't say exclusive. They say exclusive up here, okay? So they separate it out. So it's better in the Eastern Code because they put it in. They make one sandwich out of it. It's more straightforward. I just noticed that the other day. All right, then P.S. Here's Canon 1696. Cases of separation of spouses also concern the public good. The promoter of justice must therefore always intervene. So marriage is public. Ain't no way around it. This is why this NFP cannot exist with Catholicism. It's never going to work. It's like using a 17-volt battery in your 12-volt car. Never going to work. You got to change the car or you got to change the battery. You can kind of fake it for a little while, but it's not going to work. So just like Amber Rose does in her things, I think we're going to have a little commercial, a little break, and we'll come back.
Leila, happy birthday. Leila, happy birthday.
Cupcakes, dreamers, piñata, balloons.
Leila, happy birthday. Leila, happy birthday.
Yep, I told you we're never going to mispronounce her name again. There's more enforcing of that or reinforcing of that later. Anyway, the church teaches that in all cases of some repentant adultery, blah, blah, blah. Okay, always with the bishop's permission. Yes, except like I said, she contradicts that earlier in the article, which says as long as you are in your mind not ending your marriage, you can take it to the state. No. It has nothing to do with that. This is what prompted Bay McFarland to say in an email, because of no-fault divorce, so the state's judiciary does not ensure certain legal rights, the care of the children, or the protection of inheritance. That's right. They violate divine law because they shred the contract. On the contrary, the spouse who did nothing grave justifying separation loses everyday access to children and is routinely ordered to support an abandoner or an adulterer in a different home. Children are coached to believe that there is nothing wrong with all of this. Exactly, which is why this has to be public. She said, it's unfortunate that Leila left out that one is not to be his or her own judge to determine that approaching the civil forum is tolerable in one's situation. This is the crux of the matter. It is unfortunate that Leila left out that one is not to be his or her own judge to determine that approaching the civil forum is tolerable in one's situation. You cannot judge yourself. Exactly right. You can't do it. This is why I think Catholic Answers let the article be published, because they're all about private judgment, because they're all about NFP and theology of the body. All right. Now, then she goes into some good stuff about Pope Leo XIII, and all that's really cool. Yes, yes, yes. Let's see what else we got here. Number 5, abandoned spouses are witnesses to marriage fidelity and must be supported by the church. Okay. She says a stander is a spouse who stays faithful to his vows even after abandonment, separation, or civil divorce. And even if the stander is the one who had to physically separate due to dangerous circumstances. Okay. And I say after legalized NFP, there is no such thing as a stander. This is because there's no contract anymore, so there's nothing to stand for. There's that irrevocable covenant of love, and if there ain't no love, there ain't no marriage. There's nothing to stand for. This is why there's no support for standers among the bishops. She says abandoned spouses. Okay, yeah. So you can't have a stander anymore. And why do I say this? Let's go to Gaudium. Okay, Gaudium 50, right here. Marriage is to be sure. Okay, so it says, marriage, to be sure, is not instituted solely for procreation. Bam, gaslighting, like I said in my other video about this stuff. They're saying marriage, listen, dude, marriage is not just instituted solely for procreation, and we're sure about that. If you're not sure, you got a problem. Wrong. It is instituted solely for procreation. That is the only thing it's instituted for. It's not instituted for unity, bonding, love, or total gift of self. Those are secondary things which can happen, but it's not instituted for them. It's instituted for procreation alone. That is the independent purpose, which gives us an objective contract. But now, since it's, to be sure, not instituted solely for procreation, there's nothing there to violate in natural law when you separate, because it says its very nature, the new nature of marriage is an unbreakable compact between persons. So that's a contract between persons, and the welfare of the children both demand that the mutual love of the spouses be embodied. Whoa, here we go. We got to have mutual love embodied in a rightly ordered manner. By the way, her friend, what's her name? Oh, come on. LeAnne Abel, I think is her name. She has a website called Rightly Ordered, which is newspeak for wrongly ordered, because this is what Humanae Vitae is based on, this new order, which is the embodiment of love is now the new primary purpose. But they don't come out and say that, but that's the new order. So they're saying the love of the spouses embodied in a rightly ordered manner, that it grow and ripen. Therefore, marriage persists as a whole manner of communion of life. So marriage persists as a whole manner of communion of life that's rightly ordered, as in love wins. That's where love wins comes from. So does marriage persist if there's not a whole manner of communion of life? No, it doesn't persist. There ain't no standard. What are you standing for? The train's left the station. Your spouse is not loving you anymore. They're gone, whatever. There's nothing to stand for. Marriage no longer persists. This is why divorce equals invalidity in practical terms today. So you have to go back. Like I said, we can complain about annulments. We can complain about a lot of stuff. Unless you get the contract correct, you can't, there's no law to point to. There's just mutual love, and that is an inside job. Therefore, the marriage belongs to each person individually and privately, and there's nothing to judge, just like NFP use. Increase and multiply. Well, I'm I'm going to decrease and multiply if that works for me, and you can't judge me. Don't judge my NFP. All right. John Paul II, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So he's talking about this, but still, the reason why this whole topic gets tricky is because they put a lot of nice sounding phrases in here, but it's baseless in law anymore, according to Vatican II, which isn't binding because it's not infallible, but everyone treats it as it was a big sales meeting, a big get together of feelings, and they talked about stuff, but it doesn't bind. It's not, there's nothing infallible in there that's new. So Gaudium 50 is poetic, but it's not infallible as far as what it's saying about this growing and ripening love stuff. All right, so she says, let's be honest. Do we Catholics encourage the abandoned husband or wife in this heroic stand? Not really, but we should. Do we instead encourage the standard to get an annulment and find a shiny new romance where he or she can be happy? Yes, that's what happens. Worse, do we, even the ordained and agents of the church? Dang right, because the bishop says there's nothing we can do here. This is a private matter. As long as they don't do anything publicly wrong, they can keep going to communion. And publicly wrong is adultery only. And now Pope Francis, rest in peace, has said that adultery is no longer public. It's private. It's a case-by-case basis and all that stuff. Whenever you see that case-by-case stuff, run the other way, because they're saying what is public is now private. That is heresy. Okay, so condescend or to shame those hidden martyrs for marriage when they don't move on as expected today. Hey, martyrdom has a lot of injustice, of course, and there's a lot of hidden things going on there. That's true. All right. On a related note, somebody brought this up to me on Twitter, and it was pretty interesting, and I wanted to include it. Let's look at what the NFPers say about the marriage contract and how it affects chastity. CCC 2337. Chastity, here we'll make it bigger just because. Chastity means the successful, I'll go like this, means the successful integration of sexuality within the person. Okay, we need to successfully integrate within the person, and thus the inner unity of the man and his bodily and spiritual being. Sound groovy yet? Christopher West, check it out. Sexuality in which man's belonging to the bodily and biological world is expressed becomes personal and truly human when it is integrated into the relationship of one person to another in the complete and lifelong mutual gift of man and woman. This is oh man. The virtue of chastity, therefore, involves the integrity of the person and the integrity of the gift. What are they saying? Procreation is secondary. That's all they're saying. This is why they say it in all this flowery language. Procreation is secondary. Love wins. Marriage is private. Divorce isn't a sin. We have got to go back and fix the definition of marriage before we can complain about divorce. Because it's like complaining about the invasion in the southern border while we have a wide open southern border. We just look, there's Mexicans everywhere. What are we going to do? There are people from all over the world here, and now we're losing our country. Well, what can we do? How about shut off the border? Oh, that's harsh and cruel. How about get back to the definition of marriage before this imposter Vatican II thing messed it all up, pretending it's real. Okay, 2338. The chaste person maintains the integrity of the powers of life and love placed in him. Oh, the chaste person maintains the power of love. This integrity ensures the unity of the person. You've got to have love, and love is an inside job. I have a right to love, and you're not meeting my right to love, and there is no court that can hear that because there's no definition of what my love language is and what I have a right to. So divorce is not a sin, Leila. That's it. Okay, this part's pretty cool. Number 6, she says, by the way, wedding guests and official witnesses are to affirm the marriage, especially when trouble arises. This is a pretty good point she makes. Oh, hang on. Yeah, we'll go like bigger. Okay. Were you ever taught that part of your obligation as a bridesmaid, groomsman, or guest to a wedding is to be a witness to the marriage for life, and specifically when things go wrong later? No, nobody knows that. Just like if you are a godfather or godmother, you are obligated to pray for that person for your whole life. You're the spiritual father in a way, or godparent. Similarly, when you go to a wedding, you have to back them up, there's part of the catechism that says you need to do that too. You were there when the couple made their sacred promises before God. Actually, they made a public contract before God and the community of believers. So why are you helping them divorce and annul now? And the answer to that question, Leila, is because we're calling it a sacred promise of love. And this integrity ensures here they use the word right here. Becomes truly personal and truly human when it is integrated into relationship. That's not public stuff. Okay, so marriage after Vatican II, the contract is private. This is why are you helping them divorce and annul now? Because everyone feels sorry for the damsel in distress or whatever, and who are we to judge? Because it's a private matter of love. And that's a Hollywood thing, started in the 30s. There was a movie, I think, in the 40s that says marriage is a private affair. It's all Hollywood, and Vatican II, trying to be kinder and gentler, has picked it up. And this is why we have the problem. When trouble hits or when divorce happens, your job is not to take sides in the battle to destroy that fragile family, but rather to stand for the marriage you witnessed, celebrated, and prayed for. That's right. Your job is not to take sides. So, Leila Miller, you took a side when you said in your other article that this is how it works in real life. You had a dear friend who had no other choice but to file for divorce to protect their family. Some other article, it's pretty easily available, that you said that. So you took sides because you said she had no other choice. No, you have to tell her she's ineligible for communion until she gets the bishop's permission. That is your job, Leila. You can never tell anyone they're eligible for communion if they break the natural law of separating out of their contract on their own authority. All right. Canon Law 1060 requires us to presume the validity of the marriage. That's right. And yet too often, when great suffering comes to our loved ones, our misguided sympathy or loyalty leads us to say, your marriage probably isn't valid anyway. Why don't you go get your annulment? But that is not in our place to advise or adjudicate. In a way, it sort of is our place to advise and adjudicate, Leila. And the answer is because the marriage is valid if they had kids. Let me say that again. The rule of thumb is the marriage is valid if they had kids because they were capable, they had capacity, and they had discretion of where babies came from and how to make them. That's all you need, because procreation alone is the purpose of marriage, the essential purpose, the primary purpose. So it is our place to advise and adjudicate their nullity if they have kids and they're saying, I wasn't capable. It's like, I don't know. If you're a baseball player and you can swing a bat, you're capable of going up to bat. It's like, but you may not be capable of being the best batter in the world or something, but you can, if you got arms and you can hold a bat and go like that, you're capable of at least playing baseball. All right. You may not be the best, but if you have no arms, you're incapable. So they're saying, yeah, I'm just incapable of baseball, man. I can swing a bat, but I'm just not capable. That's it. So no. Okay. Now let's see what else she says. To pivot to invalidity when the cross comes, to advise your loved one to throw off the cross while putting it on the backs of vulnerable children, grid point, to tempt a suffering spouse toward divorce and annulment, and to aid the family in its disintegration is to have borne false witness on the couple's wedding day, which is a violation of the 8th commandment. That's right. Help and support the parties involved, yes, especially when one abandoned especially the one abandoned or in danger. What? Especially the one abandoned or in danger, but do so while simultaneously standing for the marriage's redemption. This is not its destruction. I didn't quite understand that. Especially, so help and support the parties involved. Basically, tell them real straightforwardly, the moving party is publicly guilty. The moving party is publicly ineligible for communion if they wait more than 6 months without initiating a separation decree. That's Canon 1152.3 or something. It's 1152. I know that. In summary, we've had a few decades of amnesia when it comes to our obligations to defend marriage and family. You know where that comes from? Vatican II. That's right. That's where the amnesia comes from. We have a 12-volt car, and we're using our Vatican II 17-volt battery trying to make it work. You cannot make it work. It's going to sort of turn on, and it's going to sort of cruise a little bit. It's never going to work. You have to have the 12-volt battery with the 12-volt car. We have an infinite private marriage contract with our public stuff. And no, you can't have it. That's why everyone says it's between my spouse and I. It's between my God and I. The bishop says divorce is not a sin. And even if he did say it's a sin, I've decided it's not because I know what love is and my husband doesn't or whatever. Besides, I can always go to confession. You have to make public restitution, Leila, not private restitution to get absolved. Okay, so I think we have gotten to the bottom of this mess, and I hope I beat it up enough. Don't forget to, I need some likes here so we can get this spread more. And someone talk to Leila and see if pardon me. And you tell me what else we need to discuss in the comments. And we have one more way to reinforce her correct name pronunciation. Oh, there's my phone. Hang on. I almost forgot my Taylor Marshall imitation. If you're still peddling NFP out there, you're not on the team. So go out there and stay toxic.
What do you do when you get lonely? No one waiting by your side. You've been running hiding much too long. No, it's just a fool.